If you watch this channel, you obviously appreciate a good art book, so I know you've already got your copy of the new book that I worked on, Rockabilly, Psychobilly, an art anthology. And so to celebrate the release of that, I thought it might be fun over the next few weeks to go through some of the books that are sort of related to that, or that I found a lot of inspiration from when I was creating the book. This is a review of Wildsville, The Art of Derek Yaniger, published in 2008 by Carrero. A couple of weeks ago I did a review for the Custom Graphics anthology art books by Carrero, and I mentioned that that was like my introduction to lowbrow art. So after I read that, I went and tried to find if any of my favorite artists that I discovered in that book had their own monographs published. And one of the first I went looking for was Derek Yaniger, and was really great to see that his monograph had in fact been published by the very same publisher, Carrero. So I was pretty confident it was going to be good, which it definitely is. Although, to be completely honest, Derek Yaniger is, again, one of those artists who I just think so highly of, think is so amazing, that no matter how bad the book itself was, I probably still would have enjoyed it just because I enjoy his artwork so much. The way he captures that mid-century modern cartoon sort of style is just so perfect, so authentic. But thankfully it is a very nice book. It's not particularly impressive or showy, and it's rather slim, but I still think it's perfect because it's just relying on the strength of the content itself rather than trying to dazzle you with any bells and whistles. I suppose an interesting way to contrast that is a few weeks ago I did a review for Sean Dickinson's book, which was very big, over 200 pages, nice large format, perhaps even better quality materials in the construction of the book, and yet I actually think this is a better book. Despite being a little more modest, it uses much better curation and layout, size of images, things of that nature, that I felt created a more rewarding experience. Specifically, one thing that I really enjoyed about the layout is, even though this book is only 112 pages, first of all, I'm very glad that I used a sort of rule of thumb with monographs that they should probably be over 100 pages. If they hit that 100-page mark, I'm happy, because otherwise it kind of feels like more of a self-published sketchbook type of thing, and I just don't feel that gives a substantial enough experience. So it was good that the book passed that benchmark, but also it's not necessarily one of those one piece of art per page kind of deals. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three, sometimes it's five, sometimes it's one piece of art across a 2-page spread, but it works really well because you can see an intelligence behind these decisions. And I felt that all the art in this book, without exception, was sized really appropriately, especially given that because it is a sort of almost minimalist, cartoony style of art, there's not a whole lot of detail. So if, there are instances where there are 5 images per page, that's fine because you're not really losing any detail, as opposed to the Sean Dickinson art book, which, took a lot of simple art and gave it an entire page. So even though that book is, twice as thick, which looks really cool and impressive, it probably doesn't actually have a whole lot more art than this book does. Also, I'm not sure, but I imagine this sort of more modest approach to an art book actually keeps the price down. I'm not 100% sure because I couldn't find the RRP for this book. Unfortunately, it is out of print now. It's 10 years old, and secondhand copies do run quite expensive. But if you really like this sort of mid-century modern cartoon style, retro style art, or obviously if you're a fan of Derek Yaniger, I absolutely think you should keep your eyes peeled for a copy of this book. But if you can't and you still want some books with Derek's art in it, there is also 2 sketchbooks he's done. Usually I don't recommend sketchbooks, but in his case they're about 96 pages with 80 pieces of full color art, and I think that's important because what he calls sketches in this sketchbook actually kind of look like finished art. Also, the first one is called Do You Want to See My Doodle, which is probably the best title for a sketchbook I have ever heard. And his second one, called, I think, Oodles of Doodles, he announced that like literally just a couple of days ago, so you may want to check those out. Also, there's another book published by Carrero called Kiddie Cocktails. It's not an art book, it's a mixology book, but it is absolutely worth getting just for the art, and I will definitely do a review on that in the future. As for text, most of the images have like a very short one sentence sort of piece of commentary by Derek, usually just describing where the art came from, what it was used for, his opinions on it, things like that. There's also a really nice foreword by his business partner, and then also an introduction by Derek himself, which is sort of just like his biography sort of thing, and that's all the text. But the other thing about Derek Yaniger is he's very funny. Everywhere I've seen him write things in books online, he uses this sort of over-the-top beatnik lexicon, which is just really funny and delightful, and complements his 50s and 60s retro style art really well.